Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Sin and Tonic. Today's story is that of The House of Blood. Sit back, relax, grab yourself a beverage. This one is gruesome. Let's go. Sin and Tonic! I feel all in a quandary because the bench is really noisy today, I don't know why, and I've just heard drilling going on. So I'm going to get frustrated with sounds. Without further ado, let's dive on in. We will cross our fingers that the sounds stay, like that they shut up basically. Today we are going to Bonnie, Scotland, Glasgow. Sounds really posh. Glasgow. No, that was northern. Scotland. Scottish. Not on my accent game today. 2004. Let's introduce Edith McAlinden. Edith lived in a place called Cross Hill, which was a part of the town that was known for poverty, unemployment, higher crime rates, quite a lot of alcohol abuse going on. Hers had been a childhood of neglect and abuse. Edith was a challenging person. She was a bully. Edith was somebody that people would say, you don't mess with her. Don't mess with Edith. In my mind, from what I read about her, she seemed like somebody that was, there was no filter, there was no... And this is the people that I find really dangerous are the people that you kind of get that sense, when you're around people, luckily not often, but it must have happened in your life, maybe not, lucky you, but sometimes when you're around someone and your spidey sense goes off and that there isn't really, they're not in touch with that off, I shouldn't do that, or I'll get in trouble, or I should stop here, or there's no level to what they would do. I think that's really, it's very dangerous. Edith was somebody like that. Edith left home, she ran away from home at a young age. It was too abusive and toxic and awful, and neglectful, so she left home. And this then meant that she was homeless. So at a very young age, she got into or began prostituting herself so that she could afford alcohol and food. She became a very, very heavy drinker. She would also steal, and she learnt to become very manipulative to get her needs met and to stay safe and to get her alcohol money and things like that. It meant that she was also in and out of prison a lot because she would get herself in trouble, she'd get caught stealing, and obviously with the prostitution as well. So she would have stints in prison. Edith had a son, and at the time of our story, her son John was 16 years old. Sadly, she too abused and neglected her son. So as he grew up, he was in foster care. So he would be in and out of foster care. And it just sounds like a very traumatic and turmoil is the word I want to use. So this child and her, so she's in and out of prison, she's drinking a lot, and he's in and out of foster care. And when he was in her care, they together lived in a unit for a homeless shelter sort of thing, but a bit more than that. And they lived there together when she wasn't in prison and he wasn't in foster care. But when they were together, she was abusive physically and mentally to her son. So she had repeated that cycle. Later on, Edith was described as a manipulative sociopath. Blah, blah, blah. She would prey on vulnerable people for money. And her son, obviously, he too was a vulnerable person. And despite the abuse and the neglect and the physical and mental abuse that she would inflict on her son, he was loyal to a T. Is that what you say? I feel like I'm just making sayings up. Loyal to a T? That doesn't sound like the right saying, but you know what I mean. He was incredibly loyal to his mother. And that is actually really common with children of neglect and abuse. It's a really strong need and desire to be connected to our main caregiver, to our parent. And when that isn't met, you will then end up you always want it, and then you will take the breadcrumbs that parent has to offer. So the times where she was nice to him, he would have, done anything for that. always believing that he would be able to, like, if I just do this or if I just do that for her, she'll be happy with me. So it's quite easy actually for a parent, which is so sick and sad, but for a parent to manipulate a child, and for a child to be loyal and compliant with a parent. Like I said, Edith was often in trouble with the police. She was also incredibly violent. So she would drink and she would become violent. She would be kicked out of bars. She would assault people. Just, it's a lot. And just before our story takes place, she had been in prison for 9 months for assault. In fact, our story takes place the night after she was released from that prison sentence. So she was not hanging around. No time to lose. She was straight back into her old ways. But worse. Edith had a boyfriend called David, Gillespie or Gillespie, not sure. Gillespie. Gillespie. He was divorced and a father of 3. He was also a heavy drinker, so they must have been together while she was in prison serving her sentence for assault. But people see, it seems like the pairing was like, you know, it caused some confusion because people really liked David. They thought he was a really good guy, and even though he drank really heavily, he was a good, solid, nice guy. This is what I've read. Whereas Edith was, like, not many people liked Edith. Like was said, like a manipulative sociopath. Is that the right word? What's wrong with me today? I swear. My brain is just like on half speed. I do apologise. The words are evading me. Anyhow, people liked him, people did not like her. But the one thing they did have in common was heavy drinking. Lots and lots of alcohol. On this night, after she has come out of prison for her 9-month sentence, which has clearly not put her off whatsoever, she then goes round to have an evening with David. And in the course of that evening, David and Edith have an argument. The way that Edith handles this argument is just... It's just 0 to 1,000. I don't even know. I'm not sure what's gone on there. Perhaps as well a lot of alcohol. So for 9 months she would have had nothing, and then it seems like she's come out and she's drinking with David. That might have something to do with this. Not an excuse, but after going for a long time of not having any alcohol and then drinking heavily again, like, that's going to have an impact on your brain. David shared his flat with another man called Anthony Coyle, 71. He was in the flat at the same time. There was also somebody else there. That was the landlord of the property, 67-year-old Ian Mitchell. As this argument has unfolded, Edith has walked into the kitchen of the flat. She has retrieved a butcher's knife. She has thinking time and space. It wasn't in her hand. She walked to another room, got the knife, picked out a knife, and then walked back to David. She then stabbed David in both of his thighs. So she's walked back into the room after having this row, and then she's just... you wouldn't be expecting it. It just feels like this, like, absolutely. She walks in, she's got this knife, she just stabbed him, boom, boom, both thighs, leaving the knife, butcher's knife, in one of his legs. It feels reactive, doesn't it? Like, it almost feels like that's what you would do, not me or you, but it feels like if somebody like Edith, if she had that knife in her hand next to her, and, you know, it's like it's almost childlike, like you've upset me. It almost feels a bit like that. But she had to leave him and get this weapon and then come back, and then that's what she did. It just, yeah. And the fact that it was in his thighs, I'm not sure whether she meant to kill David, but he died. He bled out. And the thing that I find fascinating about this, because she'd hit an artery in his thigh, the thing that I find just a bit, wow, what? There were 2 other people in that apartment, in that flat. There was his flatmate, and the landlord. Now, they didn't ring an ambulance, they didn't ring the police. They remain at the flat. They stay at the scene. Before he died, sadly, David was screaming in agony. I mean, ow. Yeah, right, that's going to hurt a lot. And he did that. He screamed until he died from blood loss from this cut to his artery, stab wound. Edith made a scene. Now, we know that Edith is very manipulative. She was screaming, she was crying, she couldn't believe what she'd done. She must have convinced Ian and Anthony to stay put and not ring anybody. She then left the flat and called her son, John, and his best friend, Jamie. I read that she said that she was going to call them to come and help her dispose of the body. And she was saying, I'll sort it out, I'll get my son to come and help. But what she really did was get her son and his friend to come so that they could get rid of the only two witnesses to this crime. It just always fascinates me. I don't know why it still fascinates me to this day. The thought process of rather than think, it's because, if that's not, because I'm thinking from my brain, which is a healthier brain, but oh my gosh, I've done this. We need to get help. We need to get an ambulance. Even if you've reacted or whatever, no, straight away we need to dispose of the body. And straight away she was thinking, I need to get rid of these two because they've been witness. And it's so cold and so callous, isn't it? It's just matter of fact. Just like, that's happened, right? So I've got to get rid of that and get rid of you. Like, basically, just what? Needless to say, when her son, or the boys as she called them, when they arrived, her son and his friend, they had a bag of terror with them. They didn't have something to dispose of the body and all that business. They were there for one reason and one reason only, and that was to get rid of the witnesses that had witnessed Edith murder her partner. This duffel bag of doom, we shall call it, contained metal poles, baseball bat, knives, and also this shows the level of loyalty that John had for his mother. So this mother that has neglected and abused and allowed him to be in and out of foster care, he is so loyal to her that he got a phone call to say, I need your help and I need you to do this, which is, the worst of the worst, and he was straight there. He was there at his mother's side to do her bidding. And Mother of the Year, Edith, was encouraging and urging and goading on her boys to murder these two defenceless OAPs. Her son, John, fatally stabbed the landlord, Ian Mitchell, and then he proceeded to kick him in the head, causing a horrific bleed on the brain. And there was a lot of overkill because it said that the stab wound was fatal, and all I can hope is that he didn't suffer long and that it was a quick, he bled out quickly, because he was beaten with knives, he was beaten with a baseball bat, he was beaten with a metal rod, he was kicked in the head, and also stabbed. And there was something mentioned in a report about they did wonder whether the men were tortured for their PIN numbers. So I think I'm naive to think that he was stabbed first. Anyhow, when this was occurring, the flatmate, Anthony, had gone into his bedroom and locked his door. He must have just been terrified, and this is just something out of a horror film, because the two boys then went and got an electric drill so that they could gain entry into his bedroom. Jamie then beat Anthony to death with a golf club, a wine bottle and a belt. Now, Edith, we know Edith was violent and that she assaulted people and that she assaulted and hurt her own son. But there is definitely some sadistic nature to her, and I don't know whether, I'm not sure what her assaults were like. I didn't read about that, what she'd gone to prison for. But when her boys had finished and these two men were left on the floor, it's pretty certain that they are dead. After the damage that was inflicted, her idea then was to boil the kettle and to pour boiling water on their faces to see if they were dead. That is sadistic. That is just... Again, how does your brain get to that? Not take their pulse or, I don't know. Oh, but to do that, that is just sick and nasty, isn't it? That's just... They were dead. They were dead at that point. This all happened at around 1 a.m. And then 2 hours later, 3 a.m, I'm not sure what was occurring in that time period. Maybe they were talking about how to dispose of the bodies, or they were drinking more. I don't know. But 2 hours later, Edith then sort of comes alive and decides that she's going to run to a neighbour's house. So she goes to this house, James Sweeney, and she is screaming. It's like she's sort of decided that she's going to put on an act and she's going to go with that. She's going to run with it. Something awful's happened. Tears, all the lot, everything. How the story got the nickname of House of Blood is because when James Sweeney, he went over to... And also, if you're reading this, you're like, don't go with her. Oh my gosh, don't go. But he goes over to the flat to have a look, and he did not go inside. Thank goodness. So he looked in, he saw in the front door, and he said that the walls and the ceiling and just everything he could see was just covered in blood. And that is why this case was given the nickname, or whatever you call it, and that's why it was called the House of Blood. Oh, gross. Also, she got a little cheeky nickname herself. She was called Mother of Evil. Sweeney took one look in the front door, sees this, and he's like off. So he rings the police. They come quite swiftly. And when they go in, it is a real scene of just pure carnage and chaos. There are 3 bodies, all sort of crumpled and not in a good way, not in a nice way, and strewn around. So there were other weapons that had been used. There was an axe. There were big lumps of wood, a hammer, golf clubs, baseball bat. All of these things were covered in blood, in the victim's blood. And it's not just coming to get rid of witnesses. That was pure sick violence, just like a chance to act out some sadistic nature. That's got to be, hasn't it? They didn't just come in and stab somebody or hit them once or twice on the head or strangle somebody. They didn't do that. It was huge anger and overkill and just so horrifically violent. Edith, she was still, like, what's happened? And she was clinging onto David's body. All very Amdram, sounds like wake up, David, like that. The next day was the 18th of October. I do apologise, I don't think I said the actual date. So the date of the crime was the 17th, and then this was on the Monday. Hang on, no. A Monday? Yeah. Oh, well, because it did happen in the early hours, so of the 18th of October. The police they did not believe for a second this whole, dramatic scene that Edith was going on about. And also they knew Edith. She's got quite the reputation. She was charged with first-degree murder the following day. When the police had gone to the flat, when they were called, the boys were nowhere to be seen. She'd obviously sent them home. How nice. And when she was then charged with first-degree murder, Edith threw her son and his best friend completely under the bus. It wasn't me, it was them. She has no shame. She has not a lot of anything, actually. The police had guessed that other people were involved in this crime because when they went to the property, there was a lot of weapons, there was so much blood, it seemed unbelievable that she had done that on her own. However, when Edith threw her son and his best friend under the bus, bearing in mind they're 16 and 17, the police then found it quite difficult. They thought that she was clutching at straws and that she was trying to protect somebody else, because they didn't believe that these two teenagers, they didn't believe that these two teenagers could have done this. They were just like, really? No, it doesn't seem likely. However, a witness came forward who lived in the homeless unit where John and his mother lived, and he came forward to say, John is going around just boasting to high heaven about the murders, and how he and how Jamie have committed these awful crimes, and that they're really proud of it. So John and Jamie were then swiftly arrested, and they were also charged with first-degree murder. In May of 2005, the trial would begin, and at first all three of them pleaded not guilty. And then when evidence was sort of produced to the jury, and the reaction of the jury was just like it became very apparent that they weren't going to fare well in a trial if they pleaded not guilty, because then it all goes through to trial and all the rest of it. So they then changed their plea to guilty. And I am very upset with how the system has worked here. So they plead not guilty, and then they get to sort of sense the jury and see how they're reacting to the evidence. And then the jury are just disgusted and appalled, as you fricking would be. So two old age pensioners have been bludgeoned, kicked, beaten, like horrific. It's a horrific crime. And ultimately murdered, but in a very sustained, prolonged, horrific attack for innocent men. And I actually believe that in one of the men, Edith called Pops, like she treated him like a grandfatherly figure. What? Dangerous human. She is a dangerous human. And then Edith, obviously, like the pure nature of like, oh, so you have a disagreement with someone, you stab them in their thigh twice? Okay. And then they went through to their sentencing, which was in June. They were also advised to plead guilty to one murder each. Originally, Edith was charged with all three murders, and it was first-degree murder. Now, when I was telling you earlier about the events of that night, nobody really knows that other than the people that were in that flat. There was a lot of blood. There was so much blood that there wasn't, like in CSI, when they go, oh, like that strike was there and that was from a hammer and all this. It was just carnage is the only word I can say. So it was very difficult for people like forensics to determine what happened where, when, what order, blah blah blah. There was just so much blood and so many weapons, and there were probably fingerprints of lots of people on those things as well. So really hard to determine exactly what happened where and when. All that they had to go by was what they were telling them, which was that each one of them had killed one person each. Now, I just feel like, this is just my gut feeling, obviously Edith had murdered David. She was at the flat on her own, and then she called her boys. But there was so much carnage, and it was like a frenzied attack, that I struggle to believe that let's just say just the boys, maybe I'm not sure whether Edith got involved afterwards, but I suspect so. I feel like all three of those people inflicted wounds and damage on each of the other two men. That's just my gut feeling. Oh, I'm getting spicy. I am getting spicy. Anyway, everyone's going to have different opinions on it, but that was just how I have, and there's no evidence, but by pleading guilty to one murder each, they got a sentence for one murder each, and Edith got a life in prison with a minimum of 13 years. 13 years? Oh, what the deuce? And that's just, like, she's a dangerous person. That's a horrific crime. Not only did she murder David, but she also then orchestrated and organised the murder of two other men. She organised that. So what, how is that not taken into account? And then John and Jamie, they were both given a minimum of 12 years as each. But still, they were under the age of 18, but still, a minimum of 12 years. And then there was a lot of people that were of the opinion that because John, I find this difficult because I truly believe that trauma does not excuse your bad behaviour. It can explain behaviours, but it does not excuse poor behaviour. There are many people that have suffered trauma and horrific upbringings, and they do not go around stabbing people in the leg, beating people up, having fights. It's not, you can't just say, oh, because John was 16 and his mother was a horrible person and she was terrible to him and abusive, that we should excuse John. What? There are a lot, sadly, of children under the age of 18, 16, 15, 17 that have had horrible childhoods, that have been in his very, very same similar situation with similar parents, and you can't say that. You can't be like, oh, yeah. And also, so once he turned 18, would you still say that? Not you, but people of that opinion. Oh, but he was a child and he was abused. The second he turns 18, I wonder if those people would still feel the same, or if they'd be like, no, let him rot. You know, you can empathise with the horrific things that happen to these people when they're children. You can see that two things can be happening at the same time. You can not condone what they've done as an adult, but you can look at what happened as a child and think, that's awful. You know, I wish that never happened to you. That's horrible. A lot of times these people have gone through horrific things, and you can feel sad for that. You can feel empathy that happened to that child, and it's just awful that they then grow up and do this horrible thing. And then you can not, you don't empathise with that part of it. You're not like, oh, then you just think, frick, like, wow, that's not good, that's not nice, that's evil, you shouldn't have done it. And that's how I feel about John. I feel the same. You know, that it's terrible that happened to him and that his mother was like that, and it was sad that happened to her, that she had such a neglectful, abusive childhood that she had to run away and live on the streets. That's sad. But it doesn't condone what then happens later. It can partly, tiny bit, explain it. Not tiny bit, it does all add, it's all part of it. But something that people just said is that they felt like he was brainwashed. You know, maybe. I don't know where I sit with that. John was then released from prison in 2016. And he was then back in prison in 2018 for assaulting his girlfriend. I believe that Edith is still in prison because I couldn't find anywhere any information of her being released. And also the 13-year minimum, that was a minimum. So she was given life with a minimum of 13. I'm not sure how that works in Scotland as to whether they can just continue to deny her parole because she poses a threat. I mean, so hopefully she's still there. But, and I think she is, because there's no, you never know, do you? You never know what they keep quiet. And they were laughing when they left the courtroom. They literally, like, not just like, oh, ha, 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 like metaphorically, oh, we got low sentences. No, they were laughing. Just shows the nature, the absolute, just callous, cold, nature of them, that they were just like, ha, ha, ha. Have a giggle on the way out. Just another Thursday. I don't know what day it was, but you know what I mean. Sick. I guess in some ways the truth prevails because his character, John, is still shining through, isn't it? Like he was back in prison in 2018 for assault. So, I mean, but that's awful. It's awful that this is how it has to be. So, like, heinous crime, get put in prison, get released, another crime, get back in prison. Like, you know, it's a song and a dance, isn't it? A song and a dance. Can't we just use our, maybe he should just stay in. Anyhow, that is all I have for you on today's case. I have got some new shoes, and I'm going to show you my new shoes because they bring me much joy. Let's just appreciate the shoe. Oh my God. Oh, they make me happy. I thought I'd share my happiness with you. I feel like I need to like calm down now. Got really angry about that one. It's just, I don't like injustice, and that feels like a bit of injustice. I'm going to share something with you. Not to boast, but just, it's unbelievable. On a selling site, we found a spa, one of those blow up, a lazy spa thing, for 40 quid. And this guy was like, oh, we just shoved it into the shed and I think it's got a puncture. You can have it for 40 quid. And Paul's like, I can mend a puncture. £40. Works amazingly, works perfectly, nothing wrong with it other than this puncture. 40 quid. And even if it didn't work, it would just be like a paddling pool. And we don't have a paddling pool at the moment, so we were like, oh yeah, you know, it's 20 quid or so for a paddling pool, so why not just, let's get this. Assuming that the whole pump and all of the business, you know, like that makes the bubbles and heats the water, I kind of thought, 40 quid, he knows it's broken. No, it's not broken, it works. It's got all of the stuff with it, all the chemicals, it's got all the business. 40 English pounds. Shut the front door. What's that in dollars? I don't know, but it's cheap. I have wanted one for ages because I love a bath. I love just warm water. I have a bath every single evening. And I've just always wanted one, and it's always just been like, oh, you know, I think new they're about £500 or £600, and that's a lot of money. And it was always not really, it wasn't doable. And then to have one, I feel like the luckiest person in the world. And it's a bit grubby on the outside because it was just shoved into this man's shed. But I just don't care. I just feel like, I feel so grateful and so lucky I could cry. So I'm going to leave this shed and I'm going to go and get in it. I am. I'm going to look at the clouds floating by and relax. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Sin and Tonic. Hope you join me next week for another grim story and a glass or a vase or a jar of gin. I am currently not drinking because I'm not drinking alcohol at the moment. But yeah, I do hope you have enjoyed a beverage of whatever you fancy. Cup of tea, gin, cocktail, wine, beer, fizzy bubbly. And I will see you all next week. I'm so excited that I'm back. Celebrate the wins. Okay, I love you. Have a beautiful weekend and I will see you all next week for another episode of Sin and Tonic. Boom, boom, boom. Bye.